Emmerdale fans may need to prepare for a heartbreaking goodbye, because Dawn Fletcher's future in the village appears to be reaching its final chapter, and the drama surrounding her could put several lives at risk. But there is another name at the center of the speculation: Billy Fletcher. With Dawn's exit reportedly confirmed, viewers are now asking whether Billy could be pulled into the same devastating storyline. Could the former couple leave the village together? Could a tragedy force them to make a life-changing decision? Or could Emmerdale be preparing a shock twist that nobody sees coming? The latest developments have certainly given fans plenty to talk about. And with Dawn's relationship with Joe Tate already heading into dangerous territory, her future looks anything but peaceful. Dawn Fletcher has been part of Emmerdale since 2018, and Olivia Bromley has taken the character through some incredibly difficult storylines. From her troubled past and addiction struggles to family heartbreak, motherhood, and her relationship with Billy, Dawn has experienced more than her fair share of drama. She eventually built a family with Billy Fletcher, and for a time it looked as though the pair had finally found some stability. They married in 2022, and together they built a family around Dawn's son Lucas, their daughter-like relationship with Clemmy, and later, their son Evan. But their happiness was repeatedly tested. One of their most emotional storylines came when baby Evan was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. The storyline placed enormous pressure on both Dawn and Billy and became one of the most difficult periods of their relationship. Olivia Bromley has also spoken publicly about the importance of the storyline through her work with leukemia care. Yet despite everything they survived together, their marriage eventually collapsed. And the reason was Joe Tate. Dawn became involved with Joe, ultimately choosing a new relationship over her marriage to Billy. That decision completely changed the direction of her character. Billy was left heartbroken, while Dawn moved deeper into the Tate world. By 2026, Dawn and Joe were engaged, and the situation had become even more complicated because Dawn was expecting Joe's child. Current cast information describes Dawn as engaged to Joe after their affair with Billy and notes that she is now expecting Joe's baby. But Dawn's relationship with Joe is not exactly a fairy tale romance. Joe has continued to show a darker side, and Dawn has increasingly found herself questioning the man she thought she knew. That is where the potential exit storyline becomes particularly interesting. Reports have indicated that Olivia Bromley is set to leave Emmerdale later in 2026 after around 8 years on the soap. Radio Times reported that Bromley was reportedly preparing to film her exit, although ITV had not publicly confirmed the departure when approached. Other reporting has described the decision as a contract not being renewed, with Dawn expected to be written out later in the year. So while fans may describe Dawn's exit as confirmed, it is important to distinguish between reported production information and an official ITV announcement. But there is no question that the speculation has become much stronger. And now the big question is how Dawn actually leaves. Could she simply decide that the village is no longer the place for her? Could she leave to start again somewhere else? Could she take her children and escape Joe? Or could Emmerdale deliver the kind of devastating twist that turns Dawn's exit into one of the show's biggest storylines of the year? That last possibility is what has really caught viewers' attention. Recent reports have already fueled theories that Dawn could be killed off. One report published in late July highlighted fan speculation that Dawn's exit could involve her death, while also pointing out the complicated circumstances surrounding her upcoming wedding to Joe. However, this remains speculation rather than a confirmed death storyline. And that distinction matters, because Dawn's exit doesn't automatically mean that the character will die. Soap characters leave in countless ways. They move away. They start new lives. They flee dangerous situations. They leave after heartbreak. And sometimes they return years later. In Dawn's case, there is a particularly obvious reason for a possible departure: Joe. The man she once chose over Billy has increasingly shown that he may not be the person Dawn believed him to be. That could ultimately force Dawn to make the biggest decision of her life. And Billy could become crucial to that decision. Billy has already been through the pain of losing Dawn once. He was devastated when their marriage collapsed, but he has gradually started rebuilding his life. More recently, he has been linked to Gabby Thomas, and ITV itself highlighted Billy's new relationship as part of its summer storyline. The official preview described Dawn struggling with jealousy as she watched her ex move on, while even Joe began questioning whether Dawn still had feelings for Billy. That creates an incredibly complicated love triangle. Dawn has Joe. Billy has Gabby. But the feelings between Dawn and Billy may not have disappeared completely. And that became even more obvious when recent developments put the former couple back in each other's orbit. According to reports on the July 29th episode, Billy attempted to kiss Dawn, but she quickly pulled away before Joe appeared. Joe then invited Billy to become one of his groomsmen, creating an extremely uncomfortable situation. Think about how dangerous that is. Joe already has reasons to be suspicious. Dawn has doubts about Joe. Billy still appears emotionally connected to Dawn. And now the three characters are being pushed closer together, just as Dawn's future is supposedly reaching its conclusion. That is exactly the sort of setup Emmerdale could use for a huge exit storyline. Because if Dawn decides she wants to leave Joe, she could find herself facing a much bigger problem than simply canceling a wedding. Joe has secrets. He has power. He has shown that he is capable of manipulating people. And Dawn has already discovered some disturbing information about him. Recent storyline information has revealed that Joe used evidence connected to Victoria Sugden and her brother John as leverage against the family. Dawn discovering more about Joe's behavior could therefore put her in an increasingly dangerous position. If Dawn finally turns against Joe, what would he do? That could be the question at the heart of her exit, and it could explain why tragedy is being teased. Imagine Dawn discovering something that she simply cannot ignore. She could confront Joe. She could threaten to expose him. She could try to take the children and leave. But Joe may not be prepared to let her walk away. That could put Dawn, Billy, and the children in an incredibly dangerous situation. And Billy's involvement could make everything even more complicated. Billy has always been protective of his family. If he believes Dawn is in danger, he may put himself directly in the line of fire. He may not care about their past anymore. He may simply want to make sure that Dawn and the children are safe. That could create an emotional final chapter for the pair. Perhaps they don't reunite romantically. Perhaps they simply realize that, despite everything that happened, they still care deeply about each other as parents. That would give the story an emotional ending without necessarily turning it into a traditional reconciliation. But there is another possibility. What if Billy becomes part of Dawn's exit? There is currently no solid confirmation that Jay Consul is leaving Emmerdale alongside Olivia Bromley. In fact, current cast coverage continues to list Billy as an Emmerdale character, and recent storylines have actively involved him with Gabby and the wider summer drama. So fans should be careful about treating a double exit as confirmed. The evidence is much stronger for Dawn's reported departure than for Billy leaving. However, that doesn't mean Billy can't be involved in the storyline. He could be central to Dawn's final episodes without leaving himself. He could help her escape. He could confront Joe. He could say goodbye. Or he could be left behind to continue raising their children after Dawn's departure. That last possibility would be especially heartbreaking. Dawn and Billy share children, meaning her exit would have consequences far beyond the couple themselves. Lucas, Clemmy, and Evan would all be affected. If Dawn leaves, the family dynamic could change completely. And if something tragic happens to Dawn, Billy could suddenly find himself responsible for the children in a much bigger way. That is why fans are understandably nervous about the possibility of a death storyline. Dawn has already experienced so much tragedy during her time in the village. She has fought addiction. She has survived abusive situations. She has battled enormous family problems. She has endured the heartbreak surrounding Evan's illness. And she has watched her marriage